whatever you hope to find. It's a pretty good use of your time. Let's learn and talk about things like squirrels and satin strings. You might think we're bananas. It's the Biggie, Kelly, and your Nana show. Hey, welcome to the Biggie, Callie, and Nana show. And today we're going to talk a little bit about stigma.
Okay, so I have the definition of stigma to read.
It's a mouthful.
Because we were wondering, what is stigma? What's the actual definition?
It's one of those words that you think you know, and you got a good idea, but it's still nice to know what the actual Webster's definition of it.
Right. All right, so it is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person, which is a lot deeper than what I thought. I was thinking about stigma in terms of biased, but that mark of disgrace seems like very final, like a death blow or something.
Yeah, that's true, but let's also see what the definition of biased is, which is prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared to another. And then let's compare that to stereotype.
Well, stereotype is a generalization, right?
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm thinking. A widely held but fixed and oversimplified image or idea of a particular type of person or thing.
That's a pretty fair definition.
Yeah. All three of them are similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they overlap.
Yeah. But it sounds like they're saying that stigma is a more malicious word than the other two. It's used to accuse or ridicule.
It's saying that who that person is or whatever they're doing, whatever is the thing that is stigmatized is abhorrent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something that's fundamentally wrong about that person, and that is why there's stigma attached to it. Mm-hmm. And so they must live in disgrace, shunned by the villagers.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much.
So let's kick it off with their uncomfortable question.
Yeah.
Which is stigma a necessity for humankind?
Well, that's kind of what I was going to go with it anyway. Is there any good that can come from stigma?
Also, we can expand it a little bit, and could any good, if not come from stigma, also come from, or in lieu of, come from bias or stereotypes?
They exist. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they exist tells me, and they've always existed, by the way. I don't think there's ever been a time in the history of humanity that we have not had stigma or bias or stereotypes. Mm-hmm. Now, I didn't grow up in ancient Babylon, but judging by the fact that they enslaved everyone around them, my guess would be they had stigma and bias and stereotypes, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, if it's been around since Babylon, if not older, there's a purpose, right? That would be indicative of an evolutionary purpose. Mm-hmm. So if there's a reason it exists, and I think it's just as simple as the fact that human beings are tribal. Mm-hmm. And, well, I mean, if it exists and there's a purpose, so that would imply that there may be some good from it as well as bad.
I would agree.
Do you think that there are different kinds of stigma? Like there's a fundamental stigma, and then there's willy-nilly stigma.
Before we dive into that, I'm wondering...
Willy-nilly stigma?
Like fundamental to your life, living a healthy, good life. And then there's just stigma that people just make up. And it's just bullshit. Or do you think they're all fundamental?
We'll talk more about made-up stigma.
Well, I think that what I'm going to say is kind of a prelude to that, which is, does biasness and stereotypes lead to stigma, and is stigma just the negative consequence of taking those and utilizing those in like a malicious way? Do you get what I'm saying? So stereotypes exist, and in my opinion, stereotypes are a great thing. I think they're a wonderful tool, and people always get butthurt when I say that.
Just tell the audience again why you feel like it is a great tool.
Okay, stereotypes have always existed because stereotypes are looking at the average. It's looking at more than 50%. So more than 50% of this situation leads to this. So stereotypical, this leads to this more than 50% of the time. Or this person is capable of this more than 50% of the time. Understanding that probability and that average is super important. And the reason why, a specific example I can think of, is stereotype, bunch of guys in a dark alley, all making a lot of noise and trouble, and it seems very sketchy. You can tell by the way that they're dressed, by the way that they're speaking. If you're just a person by yourself and you want to walk down an alley, that's probably not the alley to walk down. That right there might cause you and be the difference between living and dying.
Do you remember?
So that's why I think that they're handy, but I think that they can get out of control. But to realize they exist for a reason, and that's that 50% or more.
And your motivation behind that is survival.
Yeah, 100%.
But that's not, of course, always necessary. But sometimes, it was a couple years ago, there was that couple that went on Twitter or something to prove that Islam was the religion of peace, and they went to somewhere out in like Afghanistan or something, and they ended up they did the road trip to show how peaceful it was, and how, the president at the time, was Donald Trump at the time, was just a raging racist, and
I kind of see where this is going.
Yeah, and they kind of ended up without heads.
Yeah, wild how that works.
And they went missing for months. No one could find them, and then they just showed up like their heads were like a part of some video or something like that.
Right, but now, see, the thing that I have an issue with there is that, to an extent, I do believe that they're correct in the majority of people in that ideology do not want to become extremists. I think that more than 50% of them are peaceful. But the ones that are not
there's
peaceful...
like 1 billion of them.
Yeah, exactly.
So statistically, you're looking at a very large number of people that want you dead.
Right, because even if it's 10%, 20%, you're talking millions and millions and millions of people that are extremists and will kill.
That's why they keep saying, it's like, well, it's only like 10%. It's like, well, there's 1 billion of them.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people.
Right. No, I'm agreeing with that wholeheartedly. But my thing is, like, I agree with their statement that overall it's peaceful. The thing is, if you're a peaceful, if you've got a religion or you've got anything and you claim that it's peaceful, you need to actively be fighting against the extremism. Mm-hmm. Just as the right and left need to be actively fighting against the extremist factions that they have on either end.
Well, yeah, I agree. But they don't.
Right, and that's why I think that it's...
or very few do.
Right, and they kind of accept it. And so does the left and the right, or is that what you were referring to?
No. But honestly, I haven't noticed a whole lot of the right attacking, or being kind of laissez-faire about their extremists. Most ones I meet tend to condemn them.
On the left or the right?
The right.
Yeah.
I've known a couple like gung-ho, like, man, we got ourselves a constitution. It's time to create a new government. There's a few of them, but for the most part, most Republicans I've met.
Or the, well, I ain't with the Klan, but I support them, or I don't have a problem with them. Yeah. There's a handful of those, but they are few and far in between.
And I rarely ever meet one.
Yeah, no, they're
But
rare.
I've yet to actually meet a Democrat to condone the extremists.
You mean condemn?
Condemn the extremists over the last. And I know tons of Democrats.
That's true.
And I've yet
I
to
don't
meet
hear
one.
any of them call them out.
No, yet to meet one.
So would you say that they are similar to the Muslims that won't call out their jihadists in that regard, more so than the right? I would.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is probably extremity is built into their ideology.
Right.
And it's convert by the sword.
So that's a situation where our stereotype delves into stigma, which is looking at it as a malicious nature, but is it deserved?
But there's stereotypes that are fine. Like that stereotype of like Asians doing well in school.
That's what I was about to bring up.
Yeah, it's like...
And I love how, that's a stereotype, but if you say that, they slap the big R word on it.
Ew, not Asians.
No.
It's usually white people.
Yeah. It's
usually almost always just white people.
So is a positive stereotype wrong? Yeah, Can you say a positive stereotype like Asians are on average good at math? And you shouldn't even have to say that. Are Asians good at math? Stereotypically, yes.
If you put a number before that to quantify.
Should you need a number?
Right.
In other words, are you a racist if you don't use that number? Are you a bigot if you don't say 52%?
If you're like a member of...
Stereotypically. Or if you just say, is that the difference? Is it okay to say 52% of Asians are good at math? Is that okay, but Asians are good
anymore?
I don't know. But is it okay to say that, but then not to say Asians are good at math? Are they looking for the number?
The reason it's not racist at all.
No.
But...
Well, people don't know what racist means. The majority of people that say it.
Or they do, and they don't want to use it properly because they use it as a way to control and manipulate.
Virtue signal.
And virtue signal, which is the same thing.
Yep.
But I was thinking about the Asians being good at math. That would put pressure on an Asian kid who wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So something negative, that would start moving into stigma, because that'd be disgraceful if all Asians are good at math, but I'm not.
Well, their suicide rates are very high.
That's probably not just...
Is that a stereotype?
In Japan?
Well, the performance.
Japan.
The expectations are very, very high. And when that's objectively true, and we all know that, then how can you say that that's a stereotype if we say something like that?
Well, most of these stereotypes, like I said, are based on statistics. Or at least big number of them.
They have to be, or they wouldn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's not...
Korea has a high suicide
rate.
Rate.
All I really know about that is Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Japan has a different culture. They have a different culture regarding death and suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Suicide's not looked down like it is in Christian... I mean, it is. It's culturally...
Yeah, there's no hell that you'll go to
I don't
for
think
suicide. Is that correct?
Buddhism has hell, but it's not like... It's a temporary state that you can cycle out of.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of cultural pressure there's also, they work insane hours.
Mm-hmm.
And they have cramped living spaces. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into that.
Yeah, and the amount of discipline that you're expected to have within your family unit is almost astronomical, ungodly.
There's a lot of pressure without a lot of coping skills.
Well, they also have this way of thinking about it's a collective society where we're here and we're independent.
Everybody says that,
Mm-hmm.
but I think collectivism is kind of a myth, honestly.
Well, you don't think that they have the mentality that they're doing this for everyone, not me.
To some extent, but they still look at they still have concepts of the self. It's it's like Germany. A lot of Germans, they look at, well, how is this going to impact everybody? Americans are probably the most individualistic on the planet. Mm-hmm. Even though a lot of Latinos I know are super individualistic.
Well, they've good grief.
And so it's kind of like North and South America. Very individualistic. Everywhere else in the world is not quite as much. But I still think ultimately individualism is what trumps it over in the end. I mean, it's evolution.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think
it would bring me on a different road of talking about that topic.
Well, and it's very hard to prove. I mean, and they have been, most of them have had forms of government that have thrust it upon them too. Right? Especially, I mean, look, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, China. I mean, parts of Korea.
Yeah.
And then even the high socialism that you have in Japan. And so, I mean, they've had forms of government that thrust collectivism on them. But, I mean, they still have corporatism and people making it big in Japan.
That never disappears.
Yeah.
No matter how communist, no matter how socialist you get.
But there's some individualism.
There's a hierarchy.
Individualism is rooted in that. Because that's, you don't see Sony just giving all their wealth to everybody, do you?
Right. Now, another question I was just thinking of is we've talked about the positives, or at least, and positives / survival skills. I think of everything on a biological and survival and evolutionary level. But, a lot of other people think about it socially, and that's where we come to. Nobody wants to talk about the evolution. Nobody wants to talk about the biology. Everybody wants to talk about the sociology behind these things. But,
well, I don't know how relevant survival always is, especially in a first world country.
Yeah. No, I'm not disagreeing. It's just that I don't pay as much attention to the sociology as I do the survival and evolution, and that's just me though.
But I mean,
I get why people.
It's kind of like what we talked about last week. We talked about wisdom, and I think you can almost use wisdom and common sense interchangeably, right? And
yeah, I'd say that's fair.
And so there's a certain amount of wisdom and common sense with saying, all right, well, I'm not going to go to Colombia and just start striking up a conversation with a guy with an M16.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's just...
But I think that
doesn't mean that you necessarily think that all Latinos are drug cartel thugs, right?
Right. But do you think that wisdom or that common sense comes from the stereotypes? What I'm getting at is...
I mean, I know what you're getting at. I mean, I think
to a certain extent, understanding those stereotypes and realizing which ones will actually negatively affect you to the point of survival is in itself a form of wisdom.
But how necessarily would that tie into all the stereotypes about that have no bearing on survival, like goth kids or people who listen to heavy metal or people who are good at math?
Yeah.
People who wear glasses.
No, it definitely doesn't tie into all of them. I think that's the reason that they're a thing in the first place. But now we're looking at things, like you said, those things wouldn't exist if we weren't in a first world country. If we were in a third world country, the only type of stereotypes that you would mostly have, you're not worried about goth kids or music or anything like that. You're worried about eating and not getting butchered.
I think, in some of those really rough countries, they have gorgeous music. But
I think that stereotypes outside of a survival situation, the only time that we look at these social stereotypes is when you're comfortable enough to look at them and to have them, when you're afforded that luxury.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the reason we do stereotypes is just because it's easier for the brain to generalize.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense too.
It's not just survival. It's just, if you were to look at every individual that exists and look at their perspective on every single topic, on every single thing, and not generalize at all, that would take up so much brain power.
That's true, yeah.
That
for sure.
It would be hard to make it through your day and not lose your mind.
It's like our brain organizes information in a certain way, and that is a part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That is a part of how we take information in and process it, and we're able to absorb it.
So we've talked about some of the positive. Mm-hmm. We've talked about some of the survival reasons that it may exist. But what are some negative examples and some reasons.
Right.
What are
What
some
are we
negative
on
examples?
still? Are we on the topic
Well,
of stereotypes?
Yeah, we're kind of jumping around.
Okay. Well, which one do we want to look
Well,
heavier
we've been
into?
talking about stereotypes more than anything else.
I agree. Yeah. So let's talk about stigma and talk about what are some
'Cause
negative.
I think negative stereotypes are pretty easy.
Okay.
You know, I think it's pretty obvious when you have like really racist shit like pickaninnies and like the watermelon kids and
Yeah.
you know just that real hateful kind of crap.
Right. Okay. Well, would that be stigma?
That would be
I don't think that'd be. What do you? Are you?
racist, right?
That would be utilizing a stereotype to
Stereotype.
like
in
to
racism.
make people feel bad.
to make people look lesser than what they
Yeah.
are.
Yeah, it's dehumanizing,
Right.
and I would say that's not really stigma. I would say that is more of an extreme bias, which would be racism.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. So if we're getting back to stigma,
Because you can be
root topic-
biased and actually not be racist at all. You're biased when you prefer to date blonde people.
Right. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you hate brunettes.
But
Right.
that is another one that I've ran into personally.
What do you
is
mean?
Sitting there having a conversation with a young white girl, and I was like, "Yeah, I just no, I generally prefer to date white girls. Like that's my thing, white and Hispanic girls." She was like, "That's racist," and I was
Yeah.
like, "That doesn't. I don't think you know what that word means.
No,
Yeah.
it's not racist unless you
It's
think
a
that they are
preference.
genetically inferior.
It's a preference."
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to think they're genetically inferior.
Yeah, and that's the reason I'm not dating them. Like
Yeah.
that would be
And
racist.
not even culturally inferior. That would be ethnocentrism.
right, right.
It's not even I prefer my culture.
Yeah.
It's I actually think they are genetically inferior.
Due to their melatonin, yeah.
Yeah, literally like the only difference genetically
Right.
is like melatonin skin.
No, not melanin.
Melanin, yeah. It's a couple.
Melatonin. I want to sleep real well.
Yep. Hey,
Wrong word.
that's what you get when I'm tired.
No, I did it first. You just followed me. Melatonin.
So the fact
No,
that
melanin.
you prefer Caucasian women is just your preference.
Silly.
Yeah.
That's what you are. That is the
And I
type
think you should be
of
allowed.
person you
But
are
you should be
attracted
allowed to
to
have a preference.
But it's
That's okay.
it's
Sure.
preference, not bias.
Oh, it definitely is.
I think I think they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Because you
I
have
mean,
to be
it ca-
to
maybe?
have preference towards something. You have to be biased against another. It's on a continuum,
I
right?
don't ever.
Oh, words.
I don't ever really
English language is very
consider
convoluted.
myself biased in certain preferences I have.
You're,
but maybe I am. I
If
don't
you
know.
prefer vanilla, you are being biased.
Bias is such a negative word.
Neapolitan.
Let's define bias because
We already did.
Did you?
Yeah, he read the.
you read the bias.
Yeah.
Did I tune out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the first 2 minutes of the
I
entire.
tuned out of the bias. I remember you read Stereotype, but maybe my mind wandered.
All right.
She showed a preference bias towards certain definitions over others.
Let's do biased again. Biased is unfairly prejudiced for or against someone or something. Okay, Google.
Okay, so unfairly,
Unfairly. I don't know if I agree with
prejudiced.
that.
So if I have a preference, does it mean that I am unfair? And
Well, yeah.
Are you being unfair because you like Caucasian ladies?
Would
Is
you?
that
I guess
unfair?
it would only be if you absolutely would not date someone like a person of color.
But
Like-
is that unfair?
I guess if you wouldn't give them a chance,
But is that unfair though? Because
if you wouldn't give them
you
a chance,
asking
and that's by definition unfair because you're not even given a chance to see if you would be compatible with them.
So, in other words, should you have to go with something that you don't like so that it's fair for someone else?
Well, of course.
So that's assuming that you're the prize, right? Though that you, because there's a lot of people who think that how would it be unfair? You know, like are you such a big prize? You know what I mean? Like
if everybody
Does
just
that make
showed,
sense?
if everybody just showed,
like the other person would be missing out on you. Ooh.
if everybody showed a bias towards cows and a preference towards chickens,
Okay.
we would have a shortage of chickens, right?
But would one person who had a bias, because this is one dude, this like I like Caucasian girls. I mean, wouldn't that be more
You do like Caucasian girl? I knew it.
You've wanted me to be gay for like 4
I
years.
thought you were a lesbian when I first met you. I'm sorry.
Well, that's your fantasy life, whatever.
It's not really a fantasy. It's probably the haircut.
Yeah, probably the haircut, which we could get on that tangent of guys calling ladies lesbians just because they have a short haircut, because they want a different kind of style.
I don't know, Biggie. Do you think that hairstyle, that's a stereotype, right? That hairstyle leads to sexual orientation?
Why do guys have a problem
Look at that
with
face he made.
long hair?
Well, we were talking about how
short and long hair.
When I first met Nan, I thought she was a lesbian.
Oh, short hair.
Short hair.
Why?
Oh.
What is it that guys? What's the bias with women with long hair compared to women with short hair?
Well, I feel the exact opposite when I meet a man that has very long hair.
Okay, yeah. So what? Tell me.
I don't want to
let's
assume
start with
he's
the
gay,
girl
but
thing.
I would say it's more likely than the
Solve
guy
this
with a buzz
mystery
cut.
for me.
Even like, though there's like all these Vikings and stuff with long hair and stuff.
Well, we don't live 500 years ago, so 1,000 years ago. But
This guy was checking his fire alarms earlier.
Well, see, I've never.
So you're like straight and narrow, is what I'm saying.
I've actually never. I've only met one gay dude with long hair.
I've met a bunch.
Usually they have kind of short and like styled hair, like very perfect and neat.
Lots and lots of gel.
So
Yeah.
why do
Guido.
men have something against women with long, short hair?
Well, no,
Because it looks like a boy.
And therefore, you would be screwing a boy. And it would be scared.
I'm not trying to
So
date
it's
boys.
Homo erectus. No.
Homo erectus.
person.
It is a
Homo-
person. Yeah. A
Erotic?
person who stands straight.
What's that word for homo?
Homoerotic?
When you're like
Homoerotic.
maybe.
I remember you said that to me like when we first met each other, like a month afterwards. I had a Rick bracelet on, and he comes in. He's like, "Why are you wearing that homoerotic bracelet?" And I started laughing. I was like, "Who the fuck says that?"
So maybe guys who are attracted to me, like little boys. I'm kidding.
Little
I'm so
boys?
kidding.
No,
That would explain your dating record.
yeah. Two things. It is true, and when I see a girl,
You're on my list tonight.
well, there's
Like I'm barely making eye contact with you.
there's two things. Like if I see a girl with like a stacked bob and it's short and buzz cut in the back, that is one portion of me making the assumption that person is gay. If she that's one piece of it.
It's just a cute cut.
It is a cute cut, and no, let me get there. Let me finish my
And there
thought.
are straight girls occasionally that have hair like that.
All kinds of Karens have Karen.
Oh,
Karen
come
haircut is the stock
Karens and Karens and
I ain't even
lesbians.
hating. You guys aren't letting me finish.
Sorry.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and throw it in there before I even go any further. I like chicks with short hair. Like, always have. I don't know why.
He likes young boys.
I am thinking
I'm only
It's late.
I prefer boys.
Yeah.
No. What I'm thinking is that every man wants a woman with longer hair than him. I have no hair. So therefore, if you have any hair, you have longer hair than I do. So that's my way of justifying this. I see your eyes.
I
Yeah.
think women should be able to do what they want to with their hair. And
Absolutely
I
not.
hope your wife cuts all her hair off.
She's got hair like
Oh,
almost
God.
down to her butt.
Your wife does have long hair, yeah.
It's awesome.
So,
She's gonna cut it. She's gonna come home one day, and I'm gonna say yes.
I told her one day.
you know, the reason that I like short hair, though, I think, is because it gives easier access to the neck. And I like to, occasionally
All right,
just...
now.
I just like to... No.
there's nothing
It's
to-
not a sexual thing. It's more of a dominance thing, You just... And just kind of like
so you
a
can
dog, you just hold them down on the mattress, and they're like, okay,
All
yes,
right.
sir.
So you bite your girlfriends in the neck and you pin them to the ground.
Only when they're wiggling around at night.
Nice.
I'm kidding. I don't do that.
When they
guys.
steal my bed covers, I just grab them by the neck and just pin them to the ground.
Put them to the ground. Oh God, that's terrible. But no, I do like those haircuts. But I will say
Like
that
the pixie cut.
yeah, I think it's super cute. And I also like when they dye their hair like weird colors and say the exact girl that you would not want to date because you're afraid that like
she's the one that would call you
like,
a Nazi.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why, but I'm physically attracted to that haircut.
You're physically attracted to the type of girl that would repulse you as a
physically,
human.
Right. Repulse me as a human on an emotional or mental level.
But not physically.
But not physically. No,
which
I'm
is
highly attracted to that.
Sets you up for a lot of failure.
Oh, no, it's a difficult thing. I have to deal with it every day. Because I see these girls and I'm like, man, I really want to talk to her. And then when I try, she's like, ew.
I get that.
And I'm like, oh.
Well, you know, with me, I get that because I'm very artistic. And so I'm attracted to very artistic people.
Which are generally the hippie girls and the lefties.
Which are by nature. And I was a Democrat for most of my adult life. Mm-hmm. You know, and because, you know, more artistic people tend to go left. Mm-hmm. They just do. They're more free spirits, even though, ironically, now, the reason I moved more right was just because they're no longer free spirits. Right. Now it's fascism, do as I say or else. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is kind of what the root is of all this.
Right.
But, you know, historically, they've been way more free spirits and just accepting of everybody. And, you know, just do you. It's awesome and love everyone. It's cool. And I've always been attracted to artistic girls. Mm-hmm. So
I you get that to an extent. Yeah.
I get it, yeah.
So
I never liked the pixie haircuts per se, though. But I definitely like the more arty colors in the hair. And,
he's made fun of me for years about my haircut, and I never once made fun of him about his glasses.
Why would you make fun of my awesome glasses?
Because you look like Harry Potter.
Harry Potter. I was thinking John Lennon.
That's the first. When I first met him, I'm like, Harry Potter.
I can tell.
I'm going to wait until we're done to say it.
I can typically tell how old somebody is based on how they describe my glasses.
Yeah.
If they're old enough, it's usually like Gandhi. If they're like my parents' age or even me, it's usually John Lennon.
But he had sunglasses. That's why I don't associate
John Lennon.
Didn't he have the round sunglasses?
I mean, he may have had those too, but he had those.
Did he have little spectacles?
These are literally the John Lennon brand.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And
they were a thing.
And then of course
he wasn't my favorite.
the young
more of a Paul kind of guy, huh?
Who, Paul?
She didn't like the Beatles, remember?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't say I didn't like them.
That's why we were about ready to kick her out of the trio.
We had an outside discussion about it.
Yeah. The dislike of the Beatles was pretty intense. So, and then the young kids, you know, it's Harry Potter.
What about let people be who they are?
But didn't Harry Potter have... But didn't Harry Potter, like, have, like, kind of brown frame, like kind of horn-rimmed round glasses?
They were round, and they were like that.
I've never seen it. Frankly, with parts of Harry Potter I've seen, I've not enjoyed. I think it's stupid. But, you know, whatever. I mean, it's the Lord of the Rings for the young. That's your
bias.
It's the Lord of the Rings.
Or is that your preference?
I'll second
It's my bias, but it's my age. I'm Lord of the Rings, and that's like the Lord of the Rings for the kids.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
I got into it when I got older, just because I started getting into like irreverent, cool TV, like not intense. Because I used to be so intense into like serial killers and documentaries.
Killers in Harry Potter?
It's fluffy. It's not like that.
Like fluffy, like Pokemon.
Like they say avacadabra, and with a wand, and phew, you're dead.
It's like Pokemon I Choose You, and they like throw a magic wand at someone. I really don't know much about Harry Potter.
It's not intense or bloody or gory. It's
the only one I saw had like it was a little dark. It had like a snake eating people.
The later ones, as he grows up, they get a little more intense.
They must get darker as they get older.
Yeah. Well, I feel like, you know, if you're going to rate things as far as maturity level, you've got Harry Potter, which is like PG, and then you've got Lord of the Rings, which is like PG-13, and you got something like Game of Thrones, which is rated R mature.
Should be rated X.
So, but you know, I don't really.
it's fun.
What I've seen about Game of Thrones. I wasn't like enthralled with.
Oh, you just gotta sit. You gotta watch.
I watched a couple episodes.
and
It is a
watch.
good show, and I'm one of the first people. Like, I don't like a whole lot of fantasy. Like, I've never, and I don't even like a whole lot of epics like Star Wars and stuff. I'm just not really a huge. I'll watch them.
Not really into the
Well,
Battle of
and from what I
Gilgamesh.
recall,
Yeah, no.
they don't
But Game
really
of Thrones
heat
was
up
pretty
until
good.
later. You know, like the first few episodes are a little slow.
Oh, yeah,
because
but-
it's introducing who everybody
Who-
is.
It dies like 2 episodes later.
Sometimes they do.
Doesn't pretty much everyone
Sometimes
just
they
die
don't.
in that?
Well, they got
No, there
on
was
this
a main.
like
There was a main cast that was there from the beginning to the end.
yeah.
They all appeared within season 1 or 2
I've
and
never
didn't die
watched
until the
any
last.
show with Sean Bean where he lived. He literally
Oh, yeah.
dies in
that
everything.
was
Yeah,
not
it's
he is
episode
such
2
a
or
good
3.
actor.
He is.
Why did they kill him?
Yeah, that is
That's
odd,
why
right?
they kill him off, because he's too good of an actor. So you're like, oh, he's
he
gone.
dies in like every movie he's
Yeah,
in.
Well, that does catch your attention, though.
it does,
It's
because
like,
you're
damn,
like,
you just killed
you
one of the
killed
best
the
actors.
best actor on
Yeah.
the freaking show.
So, I mean, it is an attention getter. I get it.
Even when
Yeah.
he's a good guy. Like, good guy or bad guy. Like, he gets it.
I was watching another Rome. I've been watching a lot of Vatican and Rome shows lately. The Borgias and
Don't
then,
get me started on Italian.
yeah, the Magnificent
Racist.
Mecci or something or
Is that
Medici.
racism?
Medici.
yeah Medici.
Yeah.
So I watched.
I know all about that because I went to Italy.
the Medicis are pretty
Yeah.
brutal.
Well,
And
I,
you can
I
pronounce
started,
it Medici or Medici.
I started that just the other night, and
Medici.
it had I believe it was Richard Gere, and literally within 30 seconds of the show, he was dead.
Oh, that's
Like
good
at the
then.
opening scene was him eating grapes and like collapsing and dying, and then they
Okay.
were putting coins on his eyes.
See, I can
Richard
get
Gere.
into that because I don't like Richard Gere.
I think he's such an asshole.
Did you know Richard Gere's middle name is Tiffany?
Is it?
I learned that on Schitt's Creek last night.
Is that true?
Did you Google it and
No,
verify?
I didn't Google it. I'm just sitting here saying what I saw on Schitt's Creek.
Is that true
You
though?
think they would tell you the truth on the Schitt's Creek?
Is it really called Shits?
No. Schitt's Creek?
Is
Yeah.
it shits or shifts?
Shids.
Shits.
Like a
SCHITTS.
Schmitz.
Shits.
Like shits, but without.
Yeah,
or like
I
Schmitz
get
without
it.
the M.
Richard Tiffany Gere.
Oh, you're right.
Let's see. No,
Oh, that's weird.
that's crazy.
What
Yeah.
were his parents? I wonder if he thinks he's alone now.
So, but he died within 30 seconds of the show, so it kind of showed me that the show has no problem killing off a person just because they're famous or, like, I don't know, I have a little bit of respect when they do that. Now, I know that it doesn't really matter because I'm sure they paid him like $10 to be in there for 30 seconds. Just kidding, I'm sure it was 100,000 or something crazy. But
Something that would make me sad.
yeah, that's my for a year. Like, you gave him a year's salary for 15 minutes of work. Appreciate that.
And he probably didn't even have a line. He just had to like lick a plastic grape.
I swear, I don't think he said anything.
Oh,
Literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a terrible death scene. It wasn't even convincing. But anyways,
Well, he's not a very good actor.
Well, they started doing those things from. You had a point you were going to make, but they started doing the kill off the people way back with The Walking Dead. Like they noticed you got more.
We're not even remotely on our topic.
I know. So I was going to help bring you back to what you were trying to say about your Borgias, or did you finish that topic?
Did that have anything to do with stigma or bias?
nope. So
We
we'll
know
just
Callie
evacuate
has
that.
We'll just
a
evacuate. We'll see.
racist bias against Italians.
Oh yeah, tell us about
Can
your
you be?
racist
You can't be
bias.
racist against Italians. They're white.
Oh, he's got a good point
No,
there.
they're not. They're olive.
Then no, but they're still Caucasian.
But aren't we all olive in that case?
Kind of olive.
I've never met a
Well,
white person that's like white as a sheet of
There's
paper.
actually most Asians I meet are whiter than white people.
That's true.
They're a different tone.
That's the point. There's no one's actually black or white.
It's like
Those are
when you go
generalizations.
shopping for foundation, you can have the same color but a different tone.
Yeah, I think you'd freak out if you saw a person that was paper white or a person that was jet black. Yeah, see, we're all peach or olive.
Yeah, peach or
And all
olive.
black people are a dark brown.
And most Italians, like, they're pretty peach unless they've been out in the sun. And they just tan really well.
Yeah, they do tan well.
They do. And whereas more Celtic peoples, they don't
Just
have...
turn red.
They don't have as much melatonin.
No,
think I'm a
they don't
white.
sleep as well.
They just don't sleep
Takes them
as
a
well.
long time.
You're a redhead. I think I'm whiter than you. That's odd.
Yeah.
Um,
I've also work outside, so
you're kind of red.
Pretty white.
I'm not red.
I'm kidding. You're.
I'm just red.
What
'cause I have high
about
blood pressure.
people who have a bias against red-headed people? How about that?
Ooh,
It's
You
called
ginger hatred.
It's called
ginger.
ginger. It's called ginger phobia. And by the way, in England, it's very real. In England,
I find that hilarious. Just that's a thing.
Well, isn't the
'cause
word-
it's so silly? It's like
well, no, it's not silly. Actually, when you look at their culture, it's a total hatred of Ireland and Scotland. It's total, like, it's not
Yeah.
racism because
I
they're both
get
white.
that.
But it's actually rooted in serious, like,
but they're a
war
redhead-
over like thousands of years.
I guess the amount of redhead people in Scotland and Ireland are more than other countries because there was red-haired Vikings. There's been red-haired Englishmen. Like so, I guess it's just the amount, just the amount of people per capita in Ireland and Scotland more are redhead than not.
Yeah, well, that's the
Well,
only
they didn't
redheads.
know-
The only redheads you really see come from the Celts.
Yeah, and they didn't know which redhead was going to chop their head off that day. So,
Right, but if we're talking about like Vikings prior to that,
Well, the problem is the British people are, for a very small little island, they are kind of the proprietors of human misery in like the last
the world.
1,000 years of,
The world.
yeah, well, human history would be the world, yeah.
Yeah.
But like over like the last, since, I'm trying to, at least the 1400s, England has like created so much misery on the globe.
yeah, England's created a lot of misery, and I've got to say, based on, like I said, I've been addicted to these Vatican shows. Catholicism and the Italians also have been running a lot just from Rome. Like they moved a lot of chess pieces. So between those two, that right there sums up.
Well, yeah, because
Fucking everything.
Rome about eradicated all Celtic culture. And then what was left,
They're all Italians there. Do any Celtic people want to go to Italy and
Do I?
live there?
Huh?
I mean, they're all
Say that again.
Italians.
Say that again?
They're all Italians in Italy.
Oh, duh.
So who cares?
They're culturally homogeneous. And the more homogeneous a culture, the more biased they are towards outsiders.
I mean, maybe.
The irony is America is
But
considered
I'm
to be
just-
the most racist and biased, but they're probably not.
Well,
Right, it's
how
the
many
biggest melting pot.
It
why
is,
would
so it's
you-
probably the exact opposite is true. We're
So you would
probably some of the
argue
most open-minded,
it's
tolerant people
necessary.
of other. We're talking.
Oh,
I know. I'm
if
trying
you-
to tell you what I'm saying.
If you look at facts, then yes, I completely agree. Like, we by far are the most tolerant of just about
Of
anything.
different cultures.
Yeah, cultures, races, religions.
I
Like,
mean,
we're
we-
the most tolerant.
We love America, but part of what people like about America is that there's so many varieties of people and cultures.
But if you just listen to CNN,
Yeah,
you wouldn't think that.
CNN would tell you that racism started with the founding of the United States.
Founding fathers. Yes, it's true. You were saying.
Yes, what
I
were you
don't
saying?
even remember.
You gotta
We
keep
can
those
move on.
thoughts, man.
Yeah,
We can move on.
Give you the pen
they'll
and
pop
paper.
up again when everyone's talking.
Oh, you're just
We're being rough on Danny
too
tonight.
mean.
No,
Yeah.
you are. You kind of freaking pitchfork against me or something tonight.
Hey, Biggie's not in
You
the hot
need to-
seat, so I'm not bitching at
I'm
all.
gonna need
okay?
you to redirect your energy and meditate before you come.
meditate.
Callie's not very tolerant of me today, audience.
All this tolerance talking.
All this tolerance.
No showing
he's
it.
being very biased tonight.
So let's get
He's
back
on
to
his high
stigma.
horse.
Let's talk about negative examples of stigma. How
What's
do
a,
they
actually? I think it'd be harder to come up with a positive
Ooh.
example of stigma.
good point, because we talked about positive or survivalistic reasons for stereotypes,
but
its malicious cousin being stigma.
Because
is there any positive stigmas that exist?
it's disgrace, which means you're shaming people, right?
You're shaming.
So how do you is it even possible to positively shame someone?
Or is there
got a
positive outcomes from shaming?
Well,
which
when we did
sort of
have a
talk about
fat
that.
shaming,
Yeah, we've talked about that
that.
actually in a whole bunch of our podcasts. It actually comes up almost every time in some way.
Okay, well, let's write down some of the popular stigmas and see if we can figure out any of them. Fat shaming we've already been through. What about What about suicide?
I mean, we could say that. I actually think that's a good example of something that could turn out positively, possibly.
Well, and I think the stigma behind suicide, one of the driving factors is it creates so much chaos and grief. So that stigma is actually just anger. If it's not always, stigma's not always anger.
I would agree that that's 50%, but I think that the other 50% comes from religious.
Yeah, but no one believes that shit anymore. You know,
there's a lot of people that do believe
who
that.
think that
if
you'll
they're
go to hell.
Yeah, a lot of Christians out there.
You gotta go in the woods, man.
I would say, like, 15 years ago, I used to see that in the ER a lot. Now, I don't see that much anymore.
Well, it is true that with this next generation that's coming up, it's less popular than it was before.
Yeah.
But
I would agree with that.
I mean, if we're talking about all people from age 0 to 100, I would still say that there's most religious people above the age of 30 think that you're going to burn in hell for the rest of eternity.
Again, I think that's probably the religion that you guys grew up with, not mine.
Yeah.
Honestly, because you guys just grew up in more fundamentalists and stuff.
But, I mean, where are you going to find a Christian that says, no, you won't go to hell for suicide?
Easy. Like any kind of mainline church that's not like Baptist or like Holy Roller.
Really?
Like, yeah, most.
Because, I mean, but the thing is,
like
it is
they all-
mentioned in the Bible multiple times. It's written in stone there.
Most churches I've attended, it's more complicated than just that. Because basically there would be a stigma attached if God was just judging you purely on just being depressed and ending your life, right? Mm-hmm. It'd be like, there'd be zero. I mean, look at that. If God was like, well, you lived a very holy life, but you got depressed and you ended it, so you're going to hell. That would be completely ridiculous, right?
I agree. But
yeah,
that's
I know
what's
you
written
agree.
there.
That's why I'm looking at you.
But yeah, no, I agree completely. But
When is it there in the New Testament?
I don't know. I don't know it from
It's
front
not
to
in
back.
the
I just know
New
that it's
Testament.
in there multiple times.
It's in the
Well, see, and maybe that's what it is.
Old
Maybe
Testament.
a lot of the denominations like Episcopalian and stuff, they don't look at the Old Testament as that's Judaism.
Mm-hmm. And realistically, it is. I mean, that's...
Yeah, it's not. It's a separate religion.
Yeah.
And whereas some of those like Holy Roller like Baptist folks, they act like the world's 6,000 years old, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I can only speak from like where we live. It's huge. It's still very huge here. So I mean, if you're talking like other localities, that idea is just a part of it.
And you take it. We're talking
will
about
go to
positives,
hell.
right? Because take it from someone who's worked in the ER with suicidal people, it saves lives if people are afraid they're going to hell.
That's what I thought it was an excellent point about how can any stigma be positive. But then I guess you could argue, is that positive that they stayed alive? I mean, how do we know?
And here's my philosophical core, which me and you have had a conversation about before, and I don't know if we came to any resolution. I don't even know if we disagreed. I can't remember. I just remember we conversated about it.
I can't give you any input till I know what it is.
So what it was actually, I don't know if we talked about it. I'm not sure. But this was my question, is the person that committed suicide, because we always say suicide's the coward's way out, right? That's the commonly said thing. It's what everybody says. Whether you believe it or not, it's the most common.
People won't say that for someone who's terminal and in pain, but for the average suicide, yeah.
They say it's cowardice. Now, my question here is, now I know this depends on situation to situation, but I would not say that everyone that commits suicide is a coward. I would say that there's a handful of people, and I don't know where it falls on the scale percentage-wise, but to where them killing themselves was more brave than staying alive and suffering. And this is what I'm getting at. The person that has just been given a 20-year prison sentence, you can stay alive and get raped every day because you're afraid to kill yourself and you don't know what the afterlife expects. Would it not be braver to say, this world is shitty and I am going to take a chance and jump into the next world and see what happens? So at a certain point, I think that the person that commits suicide may be braver. I'm not telling anyone to commit suicide. I'm just trying to take the stigma away from a person that commits suicide is always a coward. Because if I had somebody that I was close to that committed suicide after they got a 20-year prison sentence or something, I would consider them braver than the person that didn't, that just wanted to get raped every day. And
that's a hard but
thing you to see say, what I'm
because you have to see the future. Because we also have people, they were murderers and they changed their whole life around in prison, and they came out into the community after 25 years and they actually did a lot of good.
That's pretty rare, though. Most people just get raped and murdered in prison, or just not even, or come out of prison and like just hate their life.
60,000 murders a year in prison.
What?
Not everyone gets murdered in prison.
Oh, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying the chances of them being very successful after you go do a 20 to 25 year sentence is pretty low. Even if you come out, the world's changed in 20 to 25 years.
I think suicide doesn't have a lot of evolutionary purpose, though, outside of like we've talked about with altruism, where you're actually giving your life to save another one. That is technically suicide, right? You jump on a grenade.
Yeah.
That's suicide.
For sure.
But you're doing it to save everyone around you. So it's heroic.
Right. So it serves
There's
an
no
evolutionary
stigma
purpose.
with that.
Right. And there is no stigma with
No,
that.
you get a medal.
Right.
Well, your family does.
So what do you think? Do you think suicide is ever a braver option than staying alive and suffering? What would make it so? What would make it not? For example, cancer patient versus 20-year jail sentence versus you've done something terrible. You say you raped somebody and now their life is just fucked. Is it braver to stay alive and be a monster and deal with yourself and be depressed and hate yourself? Or would it be braver to kill yourself and get rid of yourself for the world so that you never do that again?
So I think, for me,
at least disencumber the taxpayers.
It would be brave if I go ahead and let go. If I was dying and I was
technically
burden
we're all
on
dying.
People,
But we're not suffering.
like if
There
I
is a
was a
difference there.
burden financially,
Well,
if I was
a lot of people are
in
suffering
the
every
end
day.
of my days, if I knew that it was coming and I was suffering like a lot, or if I was so medicated on drugs I didn't even know who I was, it would really be circumstantial. But that would be the only time that I would think that it would be a brave. Dying itself is a brave act in that respect, because
So,
you just let go.
here's
So
the
what I'm
problem.
saying is with like that being different from suicide to me is not brave because you're trying to get out of something. So if I commit suicide to let go of life in a specific circumstance, that may be brave, but any suicide is to get out of something.
Yeah, it's the ultimate avoidance.
Right.
Yeah. And I don't consider that brave.
That could easily be cowardice if you're just doing it to avoid consequence.
Yeah, your girlfriend broke up with you and now you're sad.
Yeah.
Like that's a bad reason.
If you're
we all know
avoiding,
that that's silly.
or even prison, if you're avoiding consequence for your behavior, I don't know if that's brave. If you're jumping on a grenade to save everyone around you's life, that's brave.
Yeah.
You're sacrificing.
Yes. Yeah. Sacrifice,
I don't know.
letting go.
I'm just thinking about it as an individual, not as societally, but
Well, see-
as an individual. If I'm sitting here and I know that the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years, or even the next 2 years is going to be shittier than it is better.
Well, you see,
Do I deal with that, and would that be brave? Or am I just too afraid to accept what might be on the other side and pull the trigger?
Well, I'm going to tell you, you know, suffering is inevitable. So say we all live another 35, 40 years, you know, I can assure you there's going to be a hell of a lot of suffering in that 40 years.
But the levels of suffering are different between me and you and a person in prison.
But we don't, we could end up in prison. We don't know that.
Yeah.
But if we did, then our circumstances would change and our thoughts on this would change.
But see, you can't predict the future. My concern is if you remove the stigma from suicide, we already have a bad suicide problem in our country. Is it just going to get worse?
I don't know. But the thing is, when I think about suicide, I don't think about it for...
You know, tell me if this is a form of stigma. People who have had suicides in their family are more likely to commit suicide than people who haven't had completed suicides in their family. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that the families that have had multiple suicides? You could actually argue they're lifting that stigma in their family. Oh, that's an acceptable way out.
Yeah, because Grandpa and Dad did it.
Grandpa and Dad did it. So if I do it, that's just what men do in my family.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
And you do see generational suicides.
Right. Yeah,
you know, Hunter S. Thompson, people claim that he was brave.
He was also bipolar.
Because he blew his brains out.
Yeah.
Oh, he was brilliant, but
Fried
he's
his
crazy.
brain with drugs and bipolar.
Yeah, but I thought that was interesting, depending on who you are. You know, because he was like his kamikaze guy, that was seen as brave.
Well, it's like Hemingway. You get to the point where you can't physically do what defined you, but you know, and that happens to most people, unless what defines you is sitting on a couch reading a book. But then you can still lose your vision. Like macular degeneration as you get older.
Yeah.
So, and then you can't even sit on a couch and read a book. But a braver person, I think, changes and adapts to their environment.
I agree.
Not just escapes.
Yeah.
I wasn't agreeing one way or
No,
the
you're
other.
playing devil's advocate.
Yeah, no, I was just bringing up the point. That is something that I've thought of, and I still don't know my answer 100%.
Well, that's something we've talked about in this show a lot. We don't always agree with what we say.
Yeah. Oh, no,
We're
100%.
literally just playing off each other half the time.
Yeah, and a lot of it's just questions to see where everybody else stands because I don't know where I stand. And I think that that's healthy.
I'm
I
just
think
afraid that
articulation is...
And this is my belief. I'm just afraid if we decrease the stigma on suicide too much, it'll just become a socially acceptable way out, and the numbers will... You'll see people who check out when they really didn't need to.
Yeah, and that would be my concern is my boyfriend broke up with me.
Yeah.
You know, and you're 15.
Yeah,
It's like,
and we're
whoa.
seeing way too many teenagers die from that shit anyway, and it's
that's
heartbreaking.
But at the same time, you know, if I had a loved one or a grandparent or someone, anybody, and they got that 20-year jail sentence or that, or prison sentence, or they got some kind of terminal cancer, and granted they were going to live for 3 or 4 years, but they were going to suffer the entire time, or go to prison, and they'll eventually get out in 25 years after suffering for 25 years and then not know the world. Those types of situations, if they were to kill themselves, I personally would not hate them for that. I would I would look at that and say, yeah, that's probably what I would have done. I understand why.
Is that I would just like learn to make a shiv and
It's
I
survival,
would
right?
nut
Prison is
whoever was
survival.
trying to rape me.
It's true, but it's also the
And hope I survive.
situation. It's also the situation of if the world fell apart. I'm a prepper. I've got everything on hand to where I could survive if things went really bad. Now, if things went bad to the extent that the Road, you've seen the movie The Road or read the book, the Viggo Mortensen movie. It was a survival Holocaust book. The whole land was just wasted. All the trees were dead. Everything was dead. Human beings in general were going to die soon. Most of the plant and animal life had been killed out by nukes all over the world. So if you were in that situation, granted, I've built up stores to where I could survive for a good length of time during that situation. The thing is, would you really want to?
Well,
Because you're going to get raped, you're going to get diseases, you're going to get people are going to hurt you.
You don't really want to survive Armageddon, but so long.
Exactly. And that's the way I look at it with prison or
you always save that last bullet for yourself.
Right. Prison or a cancer center. I look at those things as the same thing as Armageddon.
I can see that.
Because if you know for sure, now I'm not saying your girlfriend broke up with you, that's temporary depression, and me and you as cognitive people, we understand that. But if you have a situation where you know for sure that nothing's going to get better and the rest of your life is going to be worse than it is better. Well, it's under 50% and it's guaranteed to remain that, why would you not consider that as a valid option?
You can be assured it's going to get better, but not necessarily in your lifetime.
Well, I think everybody has their own threshold. Sorry to interrupt.
So going on that, there's another form of stigma with prison that comes with survival, and that is people get into gangs when they're in prison.
Right. Should we
and we
hold that against them?
And we register them as gang members, like in white supremacists and stuff, and they may not even be racist at all. They literally it's to save them. It's survival to join those groups.
I just got to throw this out there. Has anybody seen the movie Shot Caller?
You know every weird ass movie I've never heard of.
Oh, it's so good. It's got Jamie from Game of Thrones in it, which is one of his only movies. He's a great actor. Jamie? He's only played in a couple movies. She knows. But
it's hot.
Everybody loves
the little kid.
No, he's the one that threw the little kid out the window.
One of the few blonde guys that I think are attractive.
Oh, there's your bias.
But anyways, he plays in this movie to where he gets into he's had a couple of beers, like with a steak dinner at a nice fancy restaurant. He's not drunk at all, period. And he's driving home. And he gets into a terrible car accident, and I think that it was his fault in the movie. But anyways, he gets breathalyzed afterwards, and 2 of the people in the car die. So he gets breathalyzed immediately. Right. And now they throw him in prison for involuntary manslaughter. So now he's in prison for several years. And one of the things that he has to do is he's told, hey, we're going to kill you if you don't kill this person. And the white supremacist told him this. And he says, well, I'm either going to die or kill someone. That's the only 2 options that I've got here. So he goes and murders this guy. So now he's adopted into that, and he gets a 20, 30-year life sentence, something crazy like that.
While incarcerated.
Right. So a lot of times incarceration does that. A person goes in when you're talking prison.
And it's survival, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, they have no other option.
But they get out and they're branded. The people who don't serve.
In the movie, he continued to rise in the ranks, and even when he got out, that became his new lifestyle. But even if it didn't, even if you turned your back on all that and moved far, far away so nobody would know who you were and you just got the hell out of there.
Well, and I've worked with kids. I don't want to call them kids because they're like 21, and they get sent to prison for like a drug charge, and it's like you're going to get raped or murdered unless you join this little group of people who are labeled as white supremacists. And they'll get like little SS bolts or something tattooed. And then they get out of prison and they are labeled as white supremacists, even though their ideology was purely survival. Had nothing to do with race.
Yeah, they didn't give a shit about that before they went in. And even when they were getting the tattoos, they didn't give a shit.
No.
They just knew, this is how I live.
This is how you live.
This is how I eat. This is how society. I don't get shivved. Yeah. So, yeah, a stigma against that's a very unhealthy stigma that they have to deal with. That's a bad one. So how would that fall into our... I'm trying to think.
We were just talking about survival in prison or escaping it with suicide, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that people have their own threshold of what is something that they would check out from. Like, for example, like somebody who is just going to resign to that, have like a Zen mindset and say, I'm in prison, but what can I still give? What can I still learn? What can I still do? So you've got some people that are going to have that mentality, and then you've got others that are only going to see the negative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get that, but when you go from extreme comfort to extreme discomfort, like that's going...
Like Andy Dufresne when they were...
Yeah.
Getting him.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, granted, he might be able to teach a meditating class or teach somebody how to balance the books.
Yeah.
He's still getting raped every day, and before this, he wasn't.
Did Andy Dufresne get raped every day?
Not every day.
They were getting him
You don't remember when the sisters got a hold of him?
Yeah, because there was
I saw that
scene
movie
where...
like once in high school.
The sisters kept coming after Andy.
Yeah, they did.
Day after day.
What's a sister?
A sister was the white guys
White supremacist
that
dudes.
said, I can either have shit on my dick or blood on my knife.
I don't
That was the
remember them
sisters.
saying that. Did they say that in that movie?
I'm pretty sure it was that movie, yeah.
Okay.
Was it? I don't remember that at all.
It was such a good movie.
Was it?
Oh, it was.
I thought it was.
Oh, The Shank? Oh, I've watched The Shank on repeat, man.
There's a
That's
couple.
Stephen King, too.
Yeah, it's Stephen
That's
King.
my favorite writer.
Between that and The Green Mile, man, he just tears it up. But The Shank's my favorite.
See, I don't think Stephen King's a good writer. I'm not saying he doesn't come up with good stories, but I don't think he writes them well.
You just don't like his writing style.
Yeah, I don't think he
I don't mind
I think some of his movies are better than his books.
Yeah,
He's very
His
I like-
stories are
sick.
good.
he's sick. Stephen King is.
He is
read his
he's got a
books.
twisted
He's
mind.
very sick.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah,
But I don't mind it.
he's a Red Sox fan.
Well,
Okay.
I
That
like,
means nothing to me.
I like Stephen King, but he's not my favorite, but he's not, I don't hate him by any means, so he's kind of just,
I mean, I reference Pet Cemetery all the time.
yeah.
I like him. I always have.
You know, was
The
there
heart of a man is stony.
would there a lot of history down that rock?
That's pretty good, yeah. I like it.
Was there would there have been stigma against him for burying his son at the Indian cemetery?
Ooh, there's a good,
Because who wouldn't?
not a real example, but a good philosophical example.
Because if you lost your child, it's easy to judge them, right?
Yeah,
And that's what a lot of the stigmas are, judgments, right?
yeah.
Which I think are evolutionary too, but that's a whole different argument. Actually, it's part of the same argument we're making, but because that is probably tied to survival, right? Judgments,
Right.
and because you got to judge. Oh, is this lion going to kill me now, or can I still hide?
Yeah.
You're making a snap judgment, and that starts the fight or flight response. I mean, it's almost instantaneous. I think it's almost impossible to not judge. You just have to not be married to your judgments, right? But anyway, so a lot of times people judge things and put stigma on things. But if they were in that same situation, they'd probably do it. Mm-hmm. And even though, like you said, it's not real, but like if your child died and you knew you could bring them back, like you brought back your cat.
Yeah. They were just going to be evil and malicious. But he didn't know that.
But they
at the
didn't know
time.
that because
Yeah.
because honestly,
It wasn't obvious.
Let's be real. Cats are shits.
Yeah. It was
They are.
equally as evil when it was normal.
So he didn't know
Identifying another bias
he did-
to
yeah.
cats.
Yeah, he did. He did
I have
not,
it too.
He did not know because cats are evil.
This
Yeah.
would
He
be
didn't
like
know that it changed its personality.
this would be like me bringing Lucius back.
Yeah, no personality change.
Well,
That's just Doberman.
I can't remember
Yeah,
what
my Doberman,
happened. Did he
for context.
end up killing the cat a second time? I can't
Yeah, I
remember.
think-
So
Did he
I
have
think
to
he
kill it?
ended up
Oh
thinking.
yeah. No. They used the syringe. Put Church down that way.
Okay.
Yeah, they took him to the vet.
He
Yeah.
put the kid down that way too.
No, the kid got killed.
The kid got a syringe.
Was it
Well,
a syringe?
The book and the movie were different, and
Yeah.
the new
That's
movie was
not
different.
fair,
It was 3 different
Daddy.
endings.
Yeah, I don't know about the book. I haven't actually read the book.
Oh,
But
really?
The old
That was one of
movie-
his best, where the book outdid the movie, in my opinion. The ending was more distasteful, which I like in the book.
Okay.
But anyway, so you can argue.
I have the book. I'll let you borrow it.
So you can argue easily so that bringing someone back from the dead would be morally wrong, right? Zombie
Zombies.
Jesus, and so you can make zombie child is. But if you were in that situation, is it your kid that died? I mean, I know you two don't have kids, but I'm sure you can
Doesn't
empathize
matter.
that knowing that the loss
Yeah.
of a kid is pretty much one of the worst pains you could ever experience.
Yeah.
And if not the worst. And so if you had the potential, I mean, would you?
Doesn't that same scenario apply to everything that we've talked to? Suicide, might you commit suicide in that exact same, with that state of mind, with those exact
Exactly.
same factors?
Well-
might you join that gang? Might you do this? Might you do that?
Well, and that's something that Sam Harris actually talked about, is there's no such thing as free will. every single thing that we do is purposeful based on all of the experiences up to that point. And there's no indication that people had any choice to do anything other than what they did.
That's a good free will.
Man,
argument.
that takes off a lot of pressure.
Well, and it's also...
Well, let's hope not too much pressure.
I don't necessarily believe that, by the way. Yeah. And I think it's very obvious that Sam Harris has never done therapy in a day in his life. Because if you believe that, then you might as well not even do therapy with someone, right?
Well, no, it's positive in the way that you're like, okay, so you're here. You don't have to dwell on your mistakes in the past, but how are we going to move forward?
Well, sometimes you need to dwell on your mistakes in the fucking past.
Not if you do it every fucking day, and that's some people do.
Well, if you did some heinous shit,
a lot of people don't.
If you did some heinous shit that you need to figure out, you don't. It's like Satan in Devil's Advocate. Guilt's like a bucket of bricks. Just set it down. It's not good.
Well, no, I mean, the idea is to do better. So, I mean, we're talking about a different type of mindset where that could be useful with people who have a hard time with shaming themselves for things that aren't objective. Maybe they're hurting themselves, like a drug addiction. And it's like, oh, okay, fresh start. How are we going to deal with that from here on out?
And if you take Sam Harris's ideology, honestly, that's a little bit dangerous because it takes total blame off of you.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah, I'm a drug addict because of these scenarios, not because I choose to be.
Self-aware.
That's most people aren't.
Yeah, I agree with that.
My problem is, I totally agree with you. I think Sam Harris's ideology is actually more dangerous than helpful.
I freaking like it.
Well, that's because you're dangerous.
I'm not dangerous. I think I'm self-aware. So, yeah.
Except for the haircut thing.
That's your preference and your bias, and I am not married to you.
Thinking a little bit deeper on
saying,
that.
Thank God in his head.
A little bit deeper on that philosophy, though. Like, Sam Harris, he does, to an extent, he may have a point.
To some extent.
But to advertise that is unhealthy. Because when you advertise that to people that are not self-aware, they're going to use that as justification for
they're just going to rationalize everything they do. It's like, well, it's like I was abused as a kid, so it's okay to abuse my kid.
But the point of how did it get there,
that's
and the free will argument, I'm not saying he's actually right based on.
I don't know if he is. I think that's impossible to prove.
Well, it is impossible to prove because also you've got people that pulled themselves up by the bootstrap versus other people, and that is free will. And they've made the decision one way or the other.
The exact opposite of Jean-Paul Sartre. Like, he said the exact opposite. We're condemned to freedom. Mm-hmm. And so, we have total free will. Our choices aren't always good, right? But we always have free will in our choices.
Right.
Like, he gave the example of the slave, right? The slave can kill himself. He can continue to work. He can run away. He can kill his master. He's got a bunch of choices. None of them are great.
Right. Yeah.
But he's got the free will to choose what choice he makes.
Mm-hmm.
And Sam Harris is arguing that all of your past experiences are what dictates the choice you make. I don't know. I think that's too dangerous, and I don't know if it's necessarily true.
It would be impossible to do that study unless you cloned a human being and the circumstances and everything.
It's impossible to prove that he's right.
Well,
right.
I think you have to give that
information.
It's
good to think about.
Yeah, it does add a.
And you have to give that information to a certain type of personality who will know what to do with it.
That's true, and that's what I was getting at. Is the self-aware person? They're safe with that.
If he was like a psychologist he is a psychologist, but if he was working at a prison or something, they'd have
be
to
the last thing you would want to promote.
Yes, you would want him out of there so fast.
It's not your fault. It's never your fault. Because
you have
no free will to make that murder.
Your actions are all because of what happened to you.
Right.
Yeah,
and
that's unhealthy for people that don't have any self-awareness. That's the worst thing you could give them as a tool.
Absolutely.
But see, Sam Harris has to believe that because he doesn't want to believe in a God. So he has to believe that there's something else that governs it, what happens, right?
That's interesting. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
And
so that's kind of his bias coming into
play. It's his bias
with him.
because he's so determined. See, that's where like you and I laugh because we're more agnostic. When you're agnostic, it's really easy because you can just say, well, maybe or maybe not.
Right. And one of the things about that is I like a lot of what he says, but it is disgusting when he goes on to his atheist topics because he acts like his conviction is as much as a person that's full on religious.
Exactly.
So he has no middle ground of maybe I'm just a human and I don't need to know this, and that's why I don't know this. And if I did know this, it would probably not be a good thing.
And
so
the problem
I'm just
is
a stupid human, and that's
that creates this hideous bias in so many arguments he makes because he has to justify that belief that trickles out into so many other domains of his life,
right,
and his ideology.
It makes sense, and that's the reason that I like. I don't even know if it's a word, agnosticism.
Yeah, that's
right.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. That's the reason that I like that is because I find that to be the most humble of beliefs.
It's very realistic.
It's the belief that I don't know, and at the end of the day, nothing's gonna change whether I know or not, and that's okay. I admit ignorance of this subject.
My argument is the only ones who really know are dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense. So that's why it's equally irritating to me when I meet someone.
Even people who have died and had experiences, it's like you've talked about DMT and stuff, that may or may not be real.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That may or may not actually be
that could be 100% in your head.
Or it could be an afterlife experience.
Yeah, could be either way.
Yeah, either way. Only the dead, the fully dead, really know.
Right. Unless there is nothing, and then they don't know anything because they cease to exist.
Well, then they still know.
Or the moment
they do.
You die, you pop right out of a woman, like you die, and then you pop right out of the woman's vagina into the world.
Okay.
Like recycle.
Out of your sister, right?
That was in a movie. Yeah.
That would be odd.
What a weird movie.
It was.
And then you come back with all your fears and your memories, and then you're kind of like doing deja vu because...
Well, that's reincarnation.
I know.
And there's an argument in reincarnation. And as a Buddhist, I'm not sure I believe in it 100%, because if I were to believe in that 100%, that would taint like all other incoming information, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. Staying in a I'm not sure place is healthy for learning and growth.
And I can't prove that reincarnation exists. I think there's examples, and there's been some really weird things, like in India, that guy who was like a store clerk who got shot by a shotgun like 6 times in the chest, and like 3 days later, a kid was born with birthmarks in each of the same spots. Weird shit like that, right? Coincidental? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Or kids remembering their past lives.
Yeah, I mean,
like little details of.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
And with the Dalai Lama, that's how they pick the Dalai Lamas. And what the Dalai Lama had said was, as you get older, you just forget more and more and more of your past life. Mm-hmm. And or you could say you didn't, and your brain's just developing, and you're just thinking more clearly. But I know a lot of Buddhists believe in reincarnation. It's kind of one of the core tenets. But I don't with 100% certainty, because I think that would be
it's
irresponsible.
Not intelligent. Mm-hmm. It's not intelligent either, and it's not wise, because intelligence and wisdom tells you that we don't know what we don't know.
Well, that's like Sam Harris. His belief is so extreme and concrete that there's no wisdom, because it taints all the other aspects of his ideologies, because he's got to believe that. Same like Richard Dawkins or something, right?
Well, it also feels good, because when you said it to me, I go, like, so it feels good to say that, but that doesn't mean it's...
It feels great to not be responsible.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's right.
It feels great to not be responsible for your behavior.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just because this happened. That's why I do that. I didn't have any other choice.
Mm-hmm. And that is 2 different types of therapists that you're going to have. One that promotes that, and one that calls you out for it.
And one that creates victims who don't get better.
And it's crazy that that's acceptable.
I can tell you Sam Harris has probably done very little therapeutic work, and he's been more research and clinical.
Yeah.
I don't know if has he ever claimed to? I don't think he...
I don't see, whereas some like Dr. Peterson, because they debate frequently, and Dr. Peterson has tons of therapeutic clinical experience.
Their debate's great, though.
They're always very good.
Yeah. I'm not getting into the movies, but it is reincarnation. Have either one of you seen I Origins?
No.
A movie where
God, how do
reincarnation.
you just all these weird ass movies I've never heard of.
Okay, well, I was just wondering if either one of you had seen it.
What's a
because it
movie?
had
What's
lot
a
to do
movie
with
that I've heard of
reincarnation.
that you wouldn't? Let's see. Have you heard of iRobot?
Yeah.
I think everyone has.
Have you heard? That's Asimov, isn't it? Have you heard of Robot Carnival?
No.
Okay, it's Japanese.
Oh, if it's Japanese, yeah, you're going to be able to beat me up on
Robot
those.
Carnival.
Okay, thank God. There's at least one obscure ass thing that he's never seen. Anyway,
Oh, I am nothing if not a cinephile for sure. Like
I mean,
God, I've seen everything
except
except Japanese movies. Yeah.
Anyway, so we've looked at. I guess we just have to say, stigma serves a purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens when it happens on a societal? Like, we have stigmatized racism, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So would somebody who argues this is the funny thing, right? Someone who argues that stigma is abhorrent are the same people who stigmatize racism, right? But
Yeah. Yes, because that's coming from those same people. There should be no stigma
except
for
for
anything.
except for all these 50% of the country who are Nazis.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Well, that brings us back to like the 1980s, where you would see like white supremacists on Phil Donahue and on Oprah. Like you had a right to be a dick. I mean, it was your right.
Well, the
if that's what you
ACLU,
want.
the ACLU used to protect those people.
Yeah.
Just because you don't agree with their belief and you find it morally repulsive doesn't mean it's not their life if they're not actually
Yeah, so actually,
physically harming people.
in that case, having a stigma against racism
It's
is limiting freedom,
It is.
limiting the First Amendment.
It is.
Well,
So
there's
that's
something-
a negative stigma, big time, in my opinion.
If-
Although it
if you're
means
limiting-
to produce a positive result, in overall, it's destroying freedom.
It's not the First Amendment because unless you're making laws that do it. If it's just societal stigma, you still have this free speech to do it legally. You can't go to prison for it.
That's true, yeah.
If
Because
you
I
start
guess
going to prison for it, then it's
Yeah.
the violation of the Constitution.
right, yeah, societal versus, and that's what we were talking about the other day on the cast that we didn't play. Is that that there is a difference when you're talking about the First Amendment versus societal. And we were talking about big tech companies censoring speech. Well, technically, that's not an attack of the First Amendment because those are private
And
companies.
you don't have to use that.
Right.
But if
Yeah.
the government comes by and actually puts you in jail for saying something,
Mm-hmm.
now you're looking at an actual violation of your First Amendment.
But and this was on that same cast. The reason that I fall into a weird category there and have issues with it is because that is the town square now. It is recognized as the town square
and
by
that's
the
the
majority of the
argument,
public.
like, I think
but at
Ted
the same
Cruz is
time, the
making that
government
argument.
doesn't own that, and I don't want the government to own that.
No.
But I would like for them to
Not
be
Not censor.
not censor one side.
There's
well, they
something
shouldn't
very-
be, but they shouldn't be. There are laws against monopolies. They shouldn't be able to sue people who create different types of YouTube and search engines.
Yeah.
But they are doing that.
There's something very like heroic or honorable about defending something that you don't believe in based on a higher principle.
Oh yeah, that's the
And we don't see that these days.
yeah no when
Well, the
when
virtue
the,
signalers think they're doing it. That's the funny thing. That's what's giving them that moral superiority.
the ultimate in that was, and I've brought this up before, but was the concentration camp Jewish survivors defending the neo-Nazis walking in the streets and holding rallies.
Because it was
That
the
is
right
the
to do it.
ultimate example
Not because
of
they agreed.
rights trumping.
Well, that's the
Emotions.
argument. I will fight to the death for your right to disagree.
Yeah.
And that's what Ruth Bader Ginsburg did when she was young. I haven't seen that movie, but apparently back in the 70s when she was a young lawyer, she defended men when she was known to defend women's rights.
Was she ACLU when she was younger? Before she got in the Supreme Court?
I really don't know. But that was a big like controversy back then. But she was like, no, I'm going to defend this man just as much as I'm going to do. I think it might have been like child support. I need to watch the movie.
Would you, if you worked in therapy or case management, would you advocate for someone who'd been a pedophile and served jail time?
I would now. Because I'm older
if they weren't actively touching children, right?
Well, if they're actively touching children, then they need to go back into jail. Yeah, exactly.
But if they're not, but how many people like stigmatize them?
Do you want to talk about a stigma? That's the number one stigma that I've seen throughout my lifetime.
There's people in the last few years have been fighting that. Mm-hmm. I think like Vice had like so I'm attracted to children. How does that make me a monster?
Oh yeah, sexual preference.
Yeah. Yeah. They're making it a sexual preference.
Well, the difference is that children are innocent and young. And
some.
That's important to recognize that
we've had that argument.
Yeah, but
hypothetically, are we thinking about like a teenager, like a teen being promiscuous?
I'm thinking back from when Milo Yiannopoulos was on the Rogan podcast, and him and Rogan had this big it was a debate. It was heated as fuck, and he said that
Milo's a little histrionic.
he's an interesting cat, but his argument was that when him and the priest got together. Mm-hmm. He said that Father so-and-so gave the best head that I'd ever had, and I was the monster. I was utilizing him because I was a 15-year-old boy, and I wanted to get my dick sucked, and I knew he would do it, so I utilized the fuck out of him. Well, and I mean, this guy is...
Level. Milo has a different kind of maturity level. He's not very mature.
He was trying to say, though...
He's trauma. Funny, but...
I mean, he's been molested, so kind of like what we had talked about last time, where you can get stunted where your trauma occurred.
Mm-hmm. Right, but he was trying to say that young men especially young gay men, are a different level of culpability as, say, a young 12 or 13-year-old girl.
I would just argue, no way, man.
They're more sexually inclined. Well, no, that is true.
Well, boys in general are more sexually
based on brain development.
They develop sexually. It seems like quicker than girls.
I think Nana's disagreeing with you very severely.
I am because of brain development and how young they are mentally.
Physically they've developed.
That's all I'm saying.
But just because a girl's getting her menstrual cycle doesn't mean it's time to start having kids with her, right?
Or she's seen a couple of dirty movies. Are we
talking evolutionary or are we talking societally?
And she's seen a couple dirty movies and said, "Oh, I want to try that," and comes on to an older man. That man's got to say,
So this is my question.
You're not mature. That's the whole reason. You're not mature enough.
Here's my question with this, and this is.
He's putting her over here. That was the.
This is my. This is my thought.
The visual on radio.
You over there. So this is my thought is, I'm not defending anybody by any means. This is just questions.
Sure.
So if the young girl says, I've seen this dirty movie, I want to try this with this older man, she does it, and then afterwards, how much percentage of girls are traumatized by that event? You may say it's a high percentage. I may agree with you. Young boys see a dirty movie, want to try that. They get with an older woman. How many of those boys are traumatized after that? I would say the percentage is astronomically low in comparison to the girls.
And you could argue that that could just be because of different social stigmas, right?
Yeah.
It's more okay for people to say sexually active boys are just going to be boys.
Right. I never feel bad when that sexy ass 11th grade teacher gets caught with her 16-year-old
It's like that South Park episode.
I don't cry for him.
What is South Park? Nice.
Yeah. No, and it's 100%.
And they joke on the hypocrisy of that, by the way.
Exactly. And as South Park always is, they're dead on. Like they make excellent points about that.
I feel like just even the knowledge that at some point that man or that boy grows up and becomes an adult and starts having his own kids, and then he starts realizing, man, she she took advantage of me.
There's definitely an age. I would say 15 is a pretty decent cutoff, because your teenage kid is. When I was 15, I was running around with girls that were like 19, 20. Mm-hmm. They were just more mature.
Yeah.
And so,
Well, what about a woman who's like 40 with a 15-year-old?
There's something wrong with that person. I think that's
Yeah.
what we're picking up.
Yeah.
Right? Why would
I think that there's something wrong with her.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but do I consider him a victim?
Well,
I don't. In any way. He's 15. He's so horny, he would rape a sheep if you put it in front of him and he wouldn't get caught.
I've been a horny 15-year-old, and I didn't want to do that to a sheep.
Well, okay, we're not all the same.
I don't know.
Right?
Okay, I don't know where you grew up. Actually, you've said enough that I'm pretty terrified where you grew up. And
just the Nana head shake, the smile. It's
Boys.
but you could argue that that's an individual thing. Like, is that trauma? But the problem is, I don't want to take away that stigma to find out, because then you're opening everybody up for possible trauma.
That's bad. Yeah.
Right?
So I could definitely see a negative side to that, for sure. A huge negative side. But one thing that I think is important in courts, and I do this all the time, so I'm sitting down looking at exactly what it is that sentencing is based on, all the factors that go along with that. And with a lot of these cases, those specific factors are under-addressed, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, there's too many
example,
one-size-fits-all.
Exactly. For example, the cutoff age is 17. Now, we factored in that there's a 5-year difference between this person and this person. Have you also factored in that this person already was sexually mature at 15 years old and already had a kid herself? Were you factoring that in? No, you weren't factoring that in. That's a huge fucking factor. She's already been fucked more than he has.
Maybe.
But I'm saying that's the situation that I've ran into before. Why is that not addressed? That should be addressed. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, you're victim shaming in that sense. Well, not necessarily, because she knew what she was doing. Hey, she knew that she was going to get that 21, 22-year-old creep
You're making the
trouble.
Argument, is she actually a victim?
I am saying that she is just as much of the perpetrator as he is.
She knew what sex was.
Yeah.
It wasn't like she had never had sex and was gotten drunk and the guy took advantage of her while she was drunk.
So let's propose, this is directly towards you, because I've told you this exact same situation, but me and you have never had this conversation. And this really happened. I was there.
Okay.
Well, no, I wasn't there for that, but I knew the facts. 16-year-old girl has 2 kids already. Mm-hmm. She's been having sex since she was a little tiny girl.
Somebody raped her or molested her. Okay.
Okay.
Possibly.
Sure, they did.
Possibly.
You knew that for a fact?
Yep.
With this hypothetical?
Figure it out.
So, even if she came onto them, even if she performed the act, 100%, that was rape. She went after it. She did.
Oh, that's not rape, but that's not right.
But what if what if she?
I mean, but and it's statutory rape.
No. He's saying in the past. So what if she was like 12 and the guy was 12, and she,
for example,
it happens all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Right. So
his point is that she's been sexually active for a decent amount of time prior to this.
So it's a kid on kid. Either way, it happens.
Maybe not.
She's been sexually active before this event.
Kids aren't sexually active for no reason. There's a reason why they're sexually active at a young age.
Because they're horny.
Yeah, at
15.
Wait, you said since she was a little kid, she has.
How much you mean little kid?
Yeah, what do you mean
like
by
12?
Little kid?
12, 13.
Well, that's middle school.
Not
middle
6.
school kids have sex.
So if something didn't happen to her, she had a lot of exposure. Okay, let's move on.
Middle school kids have sex.
She started having. Yeah, that's normal. 12, 13 years old.
Not when I was a kid. Only a couple kids did.
It happened when I was a kid.
Only a few kids did, and we all knew.
Yeah.
But now it's very, very common.
It is. So, 12, 13-year-old She starts having sex. Don't know anything about it, but she's sexually active. By the time she's 16, she has 2 kids, right?
Okay.
There is a guy who is, I can't remember the exact age. Let's just say 23, right?
Okay.
That's a 9-year difference. 8-year difference. Okay.
Some math on the fingers.
Yeah. Never was my strong suit. That's why I picked this career.
Is she 15 or 16?
She's 16. He's 23.
That's 7 years.
That's why we got calculators,
7?
man.
Damn, I got it wrong 3 times, didn't I? All right.
It's
there's
okay. No matter.
There's a 7-year difference. That's now. If it was
Some of that-
40 and 47, we wouldn't
Nobody
think
give a
anything
shit.
of it. But
Right.
because of the time frames and anyways, we're getting
Some of
past
that
that.
cheap fucking math.
Yeah.
Or
Fucking mad.
mental development.
Right. Okay. So we're putting in variables. So we got a 16-year-old with 2 kids who's been sexually active up till this point. Then we have an antisocial 23-year-old who doesn't really know what sex is. He's aware of it, but he's just been antisocial, and maybe he's terribly unattractive, and she's extremely attractive. Okay. If she has sex with him, should he go to prison?
Does
didn't
he
rape her.
know right from wrong?
You mean like, does he
He
have
is
like
competent.
a mental disability?
He's competent.
Like intellectually, like he doesn't understand?
He's antisocial and kind of weird. He was the weird kid that farted and smelled weird in
Does he
class.
So he
like-
does know it's wrong to have sex with a teenage
So he could,
girl.
but he could have autism though.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay,
I
we're
asked
throwing
that
in a
question.
lot of variables. This is
Well,
a
that's
normal
what
guy
that's your
just
point.
kinda
That's your point,
antisocial.
though, right? Is we don't take in enough variables when we sentence people.
Yes, that is my point. But I'm saying with the baseline of the information that you have at your fingertips, assuming that he was competent, but just weird, and had never gotten his rocks off, had never been around a girl really, didn't really know a whole lot about it, but he was competent enough to realize that yes, it is illegal.
Yeah,
But would
that's
he-
the important thing. Is he knows it's illegal.
Right, he knows it's illegal by state code. Does he know it's unethical or unmoral? Well, she's got 2 kids.
Yeah,
She's literally fucking every day.
she's not new to the game.
Right. So, should he go to prison?
Yeah.
Okay, should she go to prison?
No. Because she's
No.
a child. He's an adult.
Okay, so
now,
let's-
what would level that playing field would be if he were autistic or if he did have some kind of
What's it
cognitive
matter? He's still
delay.
breaking the law then.
So she's not culpable in any way.
Well, we should consider that.
She's a victim and she's not culpable in any way.
Nope, because she's sick. She's a child. Her mental development is not mature enough.
Okay, so when does
Well,
that mental development
having
mature?
being sexually
When she grow
active
up.
with
Now, I knew a lot of people
having 2
at
kids
17
will grow you up.
I know a lot of people that were 17 years old that were more mature than 19-year-olds. One was allowed to have sex, one was not.
You got to have some kind of standard.
So your standard is age and not person to person?
And
that's how judges judge. And that's not a
and
good
you
judgment
could and
call.
you could argue that girl with 2 children was more mature than that 23-year-old weird kid who just
That's
played
an assumption.
Exactly.
watched anime and played video games.
And this
That's an
and this
assumption because her.
but
she
you're
coulda
making
had
assumptions.
him.
That's the point.
She could have had
You're
the
making
kid
assumptions
and
that
then gave it to her mom.
You're
to raise.
making assumptions she's not mature.
Do you want to find out the results of what actually happened?
Brain development is different at 16 than it is at 23.
How's
Blanket.
that? But
Blanket.
he's being sentenced for molestation.
Okay, so that's where
Is
we're
he?
getting
Did
into
he
the what
molest?
fors.
Did he molest somebody who is fully versed in sexual intercourse?
Okay, and did she come on to him or did he come on to her?
She came on to him.
Well, then no, he didn't molest her.
So should he go to prison?
But all
Yeah, for
statutory
statutory rape.
all statutory rape is molestation. That's the point.
It's molesting someone that is under the age of 18.
Yes, it's all that's the same thing. You know that, right?
I thought statutory rape was different from molestation.
It's
Molestation is a wide legal term for diddling or fucking someone that is under the age of 18.
Yeah.
Statutory rape is what we call it in the courts. Molestation is the act. Statutory rape is the charge.
yeah, it's
Does
the
that make
legal
sense?
term. It's kind of like difference between murder and killing.
Do I think
Yes.
it's fair? You know, I have met plenty of clients that have had these kind of charges on them before. And the man explained to me the whether twos and what fours, and I was like, man, that's tough.
But the stigma, because make sure that people are understanding that this is still not just us trying to defend any kind of weird behavior we don't agree with. There's still a stigma that guy is now a registered sex offender for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Right, and I
get that.
This is what I'm getting at. You, along with all judges, would say it was against the law, and that's
black and white. You're going to jail.
You're going to jail. Doesn't matter the variables. That, I think, is a travesty to each person. To her and to him, to us as a nation in general.
Yeah, there's too many variables that need to be taken.
There's too many, and you've got to take these variables in. It cannot be black and white, and this is why I say this, because he did go to, I think, not prison. I think he went to jail for less than a year. But, of course, he was on sex offender fucking list
for the rest of his life.
Now, hang on. Let me finish. After this all came out, and after all the trial and everything was done, she came forward to friends, family, and it got out into the public that she did this purposely. She wanted to ruin his life, and she did this on purpose. So all of a sudden, she went from being victim
to the aggressor.
To being the aggressor.
Yeah.
Even though he's still considered the victim because he was more mature.
No, he's still considered the aggressor.
No, I'm saying sarcastically.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
He's still considered the
air quotes victim.
Because he's the one who molested the victim.
Right. Which is her. Even though she showed her animalistic teeth.
Even though she basically said that she intentionally engaged in her behavior to harm him.
She saw a weak person and knew his weak was physical sexual contact. That was his weakness.
That's
and
the
she
argument.
utilized it against him.
That's like the argument.
So now what do you think? Do you still think that should we go back and reset the sentence and let him out and maybe prosecute her? Because that would be what I would do personally, but it never would have came to this with me. If I was the judge, I would ask.
What would her?
Wait, she has 2 kids.
What would her?
She has sex every day.
Hey,
what are we doing?
What would her charge be?
What is the charge that you give to people that falsely claim rape, or that there is such a charge? I don't know what it's called because it's so uncommon.
Did this girl claim rape, or did someone else
do it? No, I'm saying,
but
there should be a charge affixed to people that personally set things up like that to destroy somebody's life by utilizing black and white law.
Well, the false, perjury is the charge for the people who lie about being raped. She necessarily, this girl in this hypothetical, I guess, there's not necessarily perjury going on.
This is real.
But there's not necessarily perjury.
Can kids be charged
with
perjury?
Right. But this is the question, is if there isn't a charge for that currently on the law books, shouldn't there be?
Did she testify
for doing that exact same scenario?
It's kind of like entrapment.
That question was never asked in court.
Okay.
Because she's the victim, and you can't victim shame.
Yeah.
You can't victim blame.
A lawyer wouldn't have even cross-examined her like that.
Well, do you think that he should be held accountable for that at all?
I think as much as you're going to give him a sentence, you should sentence her the same way. If you're going to sentence either one of them. Personally, if I was the judge, I'd say, okay, I see what happened here, and you did something cruel to him, and granted, he's older than you, so he shouldn't have done that to you, but both of you are aggressors, so we're just going to equalize it out.
Yeah, basically, they both broke the law.
Or, if you're going to give him 10 years, we're going to give her 10 years too.
I'm looking at it from the developmental level, because kids...
Of course, she'll get out at 18.
A 16-year-old is... 16-year-olds do shitty things, and they're extremely
So they
immature.
shouldn't be held responsible.
Well, that's a question. How would you hold them responsible, and should you if they do something shitty? Based on their level of development.
You're taking it by age, and earlier you asked if he had some kind of illness.
Yeah.
That made him mentally less culpable, right? What if age has nothing to do with culpability? What if you're 16 and maybe he doesn't have autism? You just learned a lot faster than he did. He's just not as smart at 23 as you are 16. Because I know me, when I was 16 years old, I knew vastly more and was vastly more mature and intellectual than a lot of people that were in their early 20s.
I was just getting ready to say, we do an awful lot of generalizing to assume that a 16-year-old is some moron who doesn't know how to open a door. You know, they know how the world operates.
And we also do a lot of generalizing by saying a person in their mid-20s is fully developed. That's definitely not always the case.
Just because you're younger does not mean that you are like unknowing of your behavior.
Yeah, people mentally evolve differently at different ages.
Well, and I would say even generally speaking, most, if not all, 16-year-olds know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, I would agree.
But, you know, just take it up a notch. Don't we all have different types of situations where we identify with a certain situation? Don't we have a bias by the way maybe you may identify with this young man?
Well, yeah,
more?
if someone had been molested at 16 by a 23-year-old, it would completely skew their perception of this case, right?
Well, just by default of you being a 23-year-old guy and being in that head frame, and you can kind of empathize and remember or whatever time in your life, because everybody's socially or sexually awkward at some point in their life, and you could kind of take your mind back to being that guy, whereas I might take my mind back to being 16 years old, a 16-year-old girl, and
being a good girl?
Or just understanding that everything is confused and fucked up, and how her backstory, we don't know what her backstory is as far as what she grew up watching her mother do, and you know there's so many factors,
yes,
and there's also so many ways that we introduce our own bias into that situation.
You can't assume that's true, but when you're making law, you can't. It'd be impossible to take every single situation completely individually.
But aren't we asking them
because
to do that?
The sentencing guidelines are to create some kind of objectivity in the court system, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, one thing, and I work on these a lot.
If you remove sentencing guidelines, you would have judges throwing. It's why you'd have people serving either 3 minutes in jail for pot
or 50 years
or 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's important. But I do think that I'm not saying that the guidelines need to be restructured. That's what I deal with every day. I'm not saying that they need to be completely done away with. And I'm not saying that they need to be an entire textbook for each individual charge. But they do need to take into account, or even if they don't take into account, the judge needs to take into account the different variables of the case. So say sentencing guidelines only have 9 variables, but there's 25 variables in this case. Do we restructure sentencing guidelines to incorporate all 25? That would be insane. We leave it up to the judge and have good faith in him that he is a moral and ethical person that will be able to look at these variables and make the best judgment based on it.
And that might be that might not be his jam. Like he might not care about what that thing.
And that is what we're running into is the vast majority of judges want to look at it black and white and go along with the sentencing guidelines tables.
Because he doesn't feel very passionate about the subject.
And that's where we need to eliminate those judges that are burned out and make sure that we have judges that are looking at all variables for all cases, not just the sexual cases.
We have a huge problem in our country with judges who are not ethical.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of our shit isn't because it has been created by judges who are actually going against the Constitution.
Yeah, that's true. That's an issue.
Yeah, to do to force their ideology.
Yep.
And even though they swear an oath to the Constitution, a judge is literally there to uphold.
Yeah, the oath that they swear and the actions that they take are in direct contradiction with one another.
Well, the way you feel about that situation is the same way I feel about drug addiction and addicts being charged with possession, and now they have a criminal record to add on top of everything else they're going through. I mean, so that's my jam. Like, I sit there and I think, well, why couldn't this judge see this aspect? Why couldn't they see that they were in rehab for
drug courts?
Yeah, I know, but
you know,
it's just what I'm saying is it's the same. We're all passionate, or we can all kind of identify
I'm telling
with
you,
different
there
things.
are people who getting imprisoned or sent to jail, not necessarily prison, has saved their life with addiction.
Okay, well, maybe him going to jail will save his life from never having sex with another underage girl.
That, or he's going to get the cornhole every day because he's a sex offender and maybe hung in his cell.
And
now,
maybe that could happen to the drug addict.
The thing is, you mentioned the drug addiction a moment ago. I don't know if I would assume that you were aware by now, because I know that you know that I believe in decriminalization for all drugs.
Oh, I'm just...
Oh, you're just...
Yeah, I knew that about you.
Oh, okay,
For sure.
Well,
for sure.
And the reason that I say is because I don't want to... Like you said, it does save some lives, and I agree with that. But I don't want to blanket a law over everybody, including people that it would not save their life, and give them a permanent criminal record to save a few. So that's not utilitarianistic. So
what about
my ideology?
We got like 10 minutes here.
Sure.
So what about the stigma on drug use?
It's a good one. That's a good one. Should there be a stigma? I believe that there should be a stigma, but I don't believe that there should be law preventing simple possession.
Because I see stigma in addicts all day long. It's like, oh, well, I smoke pot, but I don't do meth.
Right.
It's like, oh, I drink alcohol, but I don't do coke. And they use that to rationalize their own addictions, right?
Yeah.
Like
absolutely.
certain drugs are for the bottom dwellers,
Yeah,
like meth and heroin.
Or my drug's a legal drug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I snort donuts from Dunkin' Donuts every day, and I've had coworkers that pretty much did that.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I mentioned in the text message was we need to get all these terrible drugs off the streets, like sugar, tobacco, alcohol. Because those drugs kill more people than all of your illicit drugs. For sure.
I don't know. The opiate crisis
Smokers,
is pretty fucking bad.
Compared to smoking from cancer and diabetes and heart attacks from sugar? Oh, God. I guess that.
Yeah, heart disease is probably way higher than opiate overdose.
Oh, I'd say it's hundreds of times higher than opiate overdose.
But we're focused on gun control, man. That's the important thing.
That's where we need... That'll save at least 12.
Yeah. That's like, number 13 on cause of deaths?
But that's what I'm getting at, is that stigma. Like, I believe that societally, we should have a stigma against bad decision-making. So, in other words, I'm not encouraging people to go out and shoot heroin, but if you can shoot heroin on the weekends and just keep it there and show up to work Monday morning and not have a problem with it, fine. But chances are you can't.
But isn't bad decisions that subjective?
It is, but everything should be subjective in that way. You shouldn't slap laws on things because they're subjective from one person to another. That's Save the Puppies Act.
Then we shouldn't have any stigma.
We got to have societal stigma.
Stigma is different than law. It's what we're talking about.
You said things should be subjective.
They should.
Yeah.
So that means, how can it be subjective and stigma at the same time?
Here's a perfect example. Cigarettes right now are not illegal, but we as a society have shunned the shit out of everybody that's publicly smoking. We have made it awkward for a person to smoke. Therefore, the percentage of smokers has been radically decreased only by public stigma. Had nothing to do with law.
Yeah.
Let's treat drugs that way.
Well, we do.
We do, but we do that and law. Let's just do with social stigma.
So your argument is that if you took away the criminal element, the drug use would pretty much just stay the same.
If it stayed the same, I don't see it becoming astronomically higher than what it is now.
Because there would be plenty of people that would use drugs that, because it's legal, that they wouldn't necessarily.
But also, there's a lot of people that wouldn't use drugs because before it was a deviant act, and I want to go against the man.
So if you can keep the stigma on it, then there's people who still wouldn't want to touch it.
Right. But you take the law away to where you're not destroying somebody's life because they wanted to go do coke and party one weekend.
Well, I mean, we take the stigma away from opiates. I mean, so many people get their opiate addiction from pharmaceuticals, from doctors.
And that's the one that's also, just like alcohol, the one that's closest to being legal, and also the one that's more responsible for deaths than any other illicit street drug.
Because it is legal if you're prescribed it.
Yeah, exactly. But we know good and well that once you're prescribed it, when that prescription's up, you're going to get it somehow.
Maybe.
Good chance. Well, not everybody, but I'm saying if you're an addict, if you've got an addictive personality.
If that drug triggers that addiction.
Yeah. If it releases that,
well, you'll
dopamine to
doctor
the right
shop
levels
and
you enjoy it.
You'll engage in behavior that...
Because there's some people, there are certain things that I absolutely love. One of them is not an opiate high. Different people enjoy different highs. When I've taken opiates...
It's the best.
See, I hate it. Opiates,
I'm not a fan.
Opiates,
I
make me dizzy and nauseous. I absolutely hate them.
I have the exact same...
When you first start them.
Yeah.
Well, even when I
you get on them...
Even when I had my hernia surgery and I was on them for 3 weeks straight, I still, every single time I took it, just wanted to vomit. I'm like, who the fuck wants to sit in their house and do this voluntarily?
I felt very vegetableized, and I don't like that. If I'm going to take some type of drug, I want it to be something uplifted. I want to learn something off of it. I don't want to numb anything. Does that make sense?
I like to numb. I mean,
that's why... You don't have a lot of trauma, do you? No, kidding.
That's why I like to... No, I like to... No,
you don't have a lot of trauma. It just dawned on me. I guess I would have wanted to numb out in that case.
Yeah, because if you have a lot of trauma, you want to numb.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You don't want to...
I think you said drama, didn't you?
She said trauma.
Did you? Oh, okay, but yeah, either one, same thing.
You don't want to think on things on a deeper level if you've had a lot of trauma.
Yeah, and that's true because if a person with trauma takes a hallucinogen, if they have some fucking skeletons in the closet, they're coming out.
They need to be in a safe space.
They can have a bad trip.
Yeah, they can definitely have a bad trip. You want to be in the right state of mind if you plan on doing that. You don't want to be scared or
so to kind
of
to end in the last couple of minutes here. Mm-hmm. So what conclusion have we even remotely come to? Besides,
we had a thoughtful conversation about stigma
itself. That's the whole thing.
So that's the conclusion. It's just a thoughtful conversation.
There's got to be some kind of more conclusive.
Well, I would say that
you've made more of the argument that stigma is beneficial.
Yes. I think that stigma, societal stigma, not court stigma, not anything like that, but societal stigma in most situations is there for a reason. And I think that it's beneficial to the populace.
It's like we talked about stigma against racism.
Mm-hmm.
Now, of course, it's been taken to the point where you're creating stigma on racism that's not even racist, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's societal driven. Right? So obviously things can be taken too far.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So I guess we should also have stigma against people who stigmatize too much.
Stigma against the stigmata.
It's like, oh, you've been shaming people too much. Shame on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, too. So I gave he gave his. What is your final closing thoughts on stigma?
That I think it's a gift that people just have a discussion about it and think more critically, even if they don't have a conclusion or an answer.
So you think you think that stigma brings on introspective thinking about a specific topic?
I do. I think it makes people grow. It makes people think about more. I mean, because I'm certainly thinking about a lot more than what I did prior to this conversation, that's how I know it was really good.
Well, and
because I'm going to take this with me, and
a lot of our laws probably stem from a social stigma. There's we should make a law about that.
Yeah, and that's where they start.
Yeah,
naturally.
It's not cool to kill your neighbor, so let's go ahead and we'll shame that. It's like, well, people are still killing their neighbor. All right, now we got to make a law.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true. I think that I would say that it's fair to say that every law that currently exists probably started as a social stigma. Mm-hmm. Unless you're talking about
you don't think there's anything that's just so fundamentally human, like murder, to be repulsed by taking the life of someone.
But that started as a social stigma too. It's just we all were repulsed by it.
Or did it? I mean, I think of Hammurabi's code, which you know.
Yeah, but we still have that.
We do, yeah. A lot of basis of Hammurabi exists in our laws now.
Yeah, and I mean, even
Is
the most
Hammurabi
extreme form
the
of that,
hand?
which is killing. Yeah, it's eye for an eye.
Yeah, I thought so. I forgot.
You know, we
Cut
kill
off your
people if
hand
they
if
do
you
certain
steal.
things in certain states. Capital punishment.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we still use Hammurabi's
But
code.
I don't know if it was necessarily like a social stigma before that. We don't know that. We can kind of assume based on
I would assume so,
current
but
people,
yeah, we don't.
but we don't really know it.
Well, you can go back to the Bible for them thousands of years, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the
Ten
first death with
Commandments.
Cain and Abel was the first murder, theoretically, right?
And that was stigmatized.
Yeah, that wasn't legal. Well, no, Ten Commandments. Well, the Ten Commandments came way after Cain
Way
and
after
Abel.
that. So, yeah, at the time it was
Yeah,
legal,
way
but it was
way.
stigmatized.
Yeah, they
I
were
said way able, way later.
way able, way able.
Much, much able.
All right, well, that's a good spot to close. I'm sure we can have this discussion in the future again too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially since you think about it more, then we'll look at things differently and talk about Stephen King less.
Yeah, you know, here
Stephen
in...
King's great. And Italians are great.
Some.
So,
And short hair is great.
see, this is
Who?
why... This
Short hair.
This is why he
on
doesn't like Joe.
girls.
This is why he don't like Joe. Italian.
Is he?
He is
He
Italian.
is full Italian.
Rogan's not Italian.
He's Italian.
Ro- he's Italian as
Rogan
fuck.
doesn't sound Italian.
His grandma's
I'm pro-
Italian, and she used to run numbers. And
Oh, yeah, he's definitely Italian, but I don't
He's
know. I thought the
Italian.
name Rogan was.
I know
Sounds
so many
Irish or
silly
something to me.
trivia facts.
Anyway,
Hey, I'm thinking, though, here in like a year or so, we need to look back and see some of our earlier casts and maybe come back and touch on them. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh,
that would be
yeah.
fun.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. See how we develop.
yeah, I'm sure we won't agree with everything we said.
100%.
Hopefully not.
Right?
Yeah.
If we
'Cause
just
we'll be
agree with everything we
smarter.
thought a year ago, that's kind of stupid.
Yeah, you gotta adapt and change.
Be smarter, more wise, and spiritually developed. Me, I will be.
And maybe put out some
Life
videos.
goals. Yes.
Coming soon. Now she's got the little.
Yeah, now she's got the
GoPro.
camera. Now she's got even less of an excuse. But you know, free will, right? You know,
He's
she
been
the reason
giving
she
me
hasn't
shit
the reason she hasn't done the
whole
videos
night.
is because of all of her past experiences.
Oh God, dear Lord.
All right, I think that's it.
Thanks, everybody.
Cue the music.
Cue the music.
Thanks for listening to the Biggie Callie Show. It's been a crazy ride, and Anna's here, you know. So come on back next week and give us a friendly ear. We'll have ourselves a merry time and drink American beer.